Hello everyone, my name is Tony Burke. I'm an AFFI skydiving instructor, and today I want to talk about pattern work and when to enter the pattern. I teach canopy courses for new skydivers to help them get their B license, and one of the things I get questions on a lot is the pattern. So, and then when's the best place to enter the pattern, especially if you can't enter at the normal entry altitude of 1,000 feet. So this video is geared towards new skydivers who are just licensed, and even pre-licensed skydivers who are doing more canopy work, downsizing. So you're finding yourself in the pattern with other parachutes. So let's just go over the basic pattern, the basic landing pattern. So let's say you want to land in the middle of this field, and what we're going to do is we're either going to have a left-hand pattern or a right-hand pattern. And in this case, we're going to do a right-hand pattern. So we started at about 1,000 feet is when we typically start a box-shaped pattern. And every drop zone is different. So whenever you go to a new drop zone or you're learning at a drop zone, make sure that you get a drop zone briefing. And part of the drop zone briefing is they will talk about the pattern that they chose for that drop zone. This is the generic pattern. This is kind of where everything starts, and then drop zones will typically adjust this pattern as to their needs. So we started at 1,000 feet, and we go down to about 600 feet. And then so this is called the downwind leg. So the downwind leg. Then we call this turning base. This is the base leg. And then we have at about 300 feet. All of this is situation dependent, but these are altitudes to start. 300 feet down to the landing area. So that's, if we're trying to land right there, that's our target, then this is about the pattern that we will do. We'll do 1,000 feet to 600 feet, 600 feet to 300 feet, 300 feet here. Of course, the altitudes will sometimes change depending on winds and so forth, but the overall pattern is we start at 1,000 feet and we make right-hand turns if it's a right-hand pattern, or we make left-hand turns if it's a left-hand pattern, in order to get to our landing area. Now, I think the most important thing to understand about a pattern is that why we have a pattern. What was the base of that pattern? In aviation, the patterns, actually, we borrowed it from aviation for airplanes. General aviation, little one-engine, four-seater airplanes, general aviation, going back to the turn of the beginning of the 1900s, after the Wright brothers, when people started having more than one airplane in the sky at the same time, we had a problem. We all want to land in the field, and how do we manage the traffic patterns, especially back then when we didn't have radio? So if I'm an airplane here, it's an old-timey airplane, a little propeller, and I want to land, let's say the winds are coming out of the north, so I want to land in that direction. Airplanes typically will land into the wind, or at least back then they landed in the wind. Today's modern airplanes can do crosswind landings and even sometimes tailwind landings depending on the situation. But back then we had a big open field that we landed little airplanes in, and we could land directly into the wind if we needed to, and we did need to. So how do I get there? Well, this other plane over here is approaching from this side, and this plane over here is approaching from this side. So how do we have some sort of orderly approach to the landing area? So the solution for that was the pattern. So the pattern is, one of the nice things about the pattern is that, let's say the airplane that I'm drawing here is going to take a left-hand pattern to land this direction. So here's our little airplane. And the nice thing about the pattern is it actually takes us, we fly by the target landing area. So when we're doing our downwind, down as opposed to upwind, as we're doing our downwind leg, we're passing the landing area. So we can do things like check for debris on the field, check for people on the field, check for the windsock to make sure that we've got the landing direction correct. We can inspect the landing area. Then we turn our base turn, and then we turn our final turn. And that's what we did in aviation. And the idea is that we're going to have a predictable way that airplanes are going to move, so that if we have an airplane coming in, he's approaching, he wants to land too. This is a terrible airplane. He's approaching too, and she wants to land. So we know that this airplane is going to follow that rough pattern, so we can place ourselves into the traffic rather than try to come in like this and do that and whatever kind of mess that can end up with. It reduces the chances of collisions, lets us be able to see each other. So we do that. We borrow the same concept from skydiving, for skydiving rather. And then some drop zones, like for example, this is a good representation of my home drop zone, Skydive Oregon. We have a fairly long field. So it's nice because we have a lot of area to land in, but it is more narrow than your typical landing area. So we have our patterns adjusted. We do 1,000 feet typically. That's inches, 1,000 feet. That's our downwind leg. Then we cross base at typically about 300 feet, and then we do our final at about 200 feet, depending on the parachute, of course. And then if we're going to land there. So we do it a little bit differently. And again, winds will affect your pattern entry and so forth. And one of the questions I get is what happens if, let's say we're going to go back to our standard landing pattern area, and here is going to be our target. Nice little bullseye here. So we want to land right there. We're going to do, in this case, we're going to do a right-hand pattern. So we're going to start our pattern entry at about 1,000 feet, or sometimes I see 900 feet used as the pattern entry, then to 600 feet. Again, these are just starting altitudes. Winds may affect it. And just because you hit 600 feet doesn't mean you're going to make a turn. If you're at 600 feet right here, you're probably going to keep going because you want to land here. So sometimes you get thermals over here and they keep your parachute up, especially if you're lighter wing loaded. But these are the general starting altitudes. We have to have some place to start, so that's what we're using. 900 feet, 600 feet, 300 feet, and then finally to land. This is our downwind leg. This is our base leg. And this is final approach. So our parachute's coming in, and let's say we get a spot that ends us up over here, and you're approaching. Now, first thing of all, as you're approaching the landing pattern and you're not at the landing pattern height yet, you want to be away from the pattern. So you want to kind of stay over here. That way we don't have opposing traffic. So if you're coming in this direction, you're looking for we call this the holding area. This is kind of where we want to hang out in order to enter the pattern. Especially if you start out, that's a good place to kind of hang out until you get a better feel for how far your parachute goes and various winds, etc. But so this will be our holding area, and you're trying to make it to that holding area. I would not go directly to the holding area, especially if you're about 1,000 feet or 1,100 feet right here, because then we're going to have opposing traffic. So we want to kind of stay outside the downwind leg so we don't end up jousting with our buddies. But let's say you are here at 900 feet. Obviously, you're not going to make it to the entry point for the downwind leg. So this is the entry point for the downwind leg. So you're at 900 feet here. Now you've got to think about getting into the pattern. So if you're 900 feet here, I would turn to join the downwind traffic and keep an eye out for other canopies that may be on downwind. I would join the downwind traffic, and if you turn like that, you'll enter, we call this entering midfield, entering a 45-degree angle in field until you get to your where it's appropriate to your base leg. That way we're not opposing traffic, and we're going to join the pattern here. So we can join the pattern here. That's totally fair game to join the pattern here. You do not have to join the pattern at the entry to the downwind leg. You don't have to join it at the top of the downwind leg. You can join the pattern at any time as long as you are with the pattern. So doing this has us going with the pattern. Let's say you're at 700 feet and you're right here. Okay, so you're not going to do any downwind at all. You're going to do a base entry. So you're going to enter the pattern right here. Now, parachutes coming this way, canopies, should be looking I should be looking in all directions, but you're especially going to be concentrating on the areas. So here's my field of vision. I'm going to be looking over here for traffic that may be entering the base leg. So you can have traffic coming in from this direction, and that's fair game. That's part of the pattern. So we'll call this a base entry. So we're starting from the base. And in some cases, you get a long spot. You're way down here. You're way down here at 900 feet. And it so happens you're going to have to do a straight in approach. Not here at 900 feet. Let's say you're here at 500 feet. I don't want to go down too below where the window is. But let's say I'm here at 500 feet. I can't do a base entry either. So I'm just going to do a straight in approach. And that is also fair game. We call that a straight in approach. Generally, we don't like to do straight in approaches if we can avoid it. Still try to make if you have the altitude to make it over here to enter the pattern, then by all means, of course, do so. Doing the full pattern is best, but it's not necessary to be a good neighbor. So what we're doing here is we're being a good neighbor to our buddies, our friends who are in the sky, to make sure that we're not jousting with them or we're not doing anything that is inappropriate. One thing we want to avoid is coming in and doing an opposite of doing a mirror pattern. We generally don't like that, depending on the drop zone. I know 1 or 2 drop zones that actually does this, and I really don't like that they do that, because then we have opposing traffic, and the area that we turn in is pretty low. Some drop zones may have split airfields. So here's our landing area. This is north. Our target is right here. Now, some drop zones will have split fields, and instead of having a target there, we'll have a target here and here, and then we have a no cross line. Maybe it's a runway. At Skydive Oregon, we actually have 2 different landing areas, and it's separated by a runway. We have a smaller landing area on the west side, and we have a larger landing area, a main landing area on the east side. The smaller side requires a little bit more experience because the landing area is smaller. But in that case, we will have, if we're landing to the north, we'll do a right-hand pattern for the east side. So this is the east side, and this is the west side. And we'll do a left-hand pattern, a mirror pattern, for the west side. But the runway is the no-cross zone, so we never cross over the runway to land like that. And that again keeps opposing traffic, keeps us from having opposing traffic. And again, you can enter the pattern if you need to at a different area, different part of the pattern. The point of the pattern is not to have a pattern. The point of the pattern is to be predictable and to be a good neighbor to our friends in the sky so that we have a less chance of collision. As always, when you're under canopy, you keep your head on a swivel. Make sure you're looking around for other traffic in the pattern. Use the pattern as a reference to see what they're doing. And also keep an eye out for unexpected things. People who maybe made a mistake on landing direction, so they're doing an opposite pattern. So always keep your head on a swivel. Look out for other traffic and stay safe. So I hope that helps clear up some of the questions people have had about the pattern. And if you have any questions, you can hit me up at Twitter. I'm at T Burke. That's TBOURKE. Thank you for watching.